One of the number one questions I get asked in regards to hearing loss is, why now? Why are hearing aids so important? And I'm going to break that down for you here today because it is one of the things in my job that I'm most passionate about in educating my patients of the importance of early intervention and treating your hearing loss. So when a patient comes to me with a hearing loss and I'm explaining their hearing loss to them, I kind of break it down in two different categories. Is your hearing loss significant or is it insignificant? Sometimes people have a little bit of hearing loss that can be normal due to aging and things of that nature. And I'll tell them, hey, you've got some hearing loss, but it's not significant. Why is it not significant? Well, because it's not really impacting your ability to hear those fine speech sounds, typically out in those higher frequencies or high pitches. And so with those people, I just kind of recommend audiological monitoring or monitoring your hearing. Now, for my other subset of patients where I tell them, hey, you have a significant hearing loss, that's where I go down that road of talking to them about why it's so important to do something about your hearing loss. And I always kind of go back to this idea of use it or lose it. So a lot of people, when they come to me, they say, wow, nobody's ever told me that before in regards to hearing. And that's one of the reasons that I like to talk about it so in depth with my patients. So on this idea of use it or lose it. So when your brain is without sound for an extended period of time, whether that be years upon maybe sometimes even decades, what can happen is that auditory nerve is not getting that signal to your auditory processing center of the brain. And so when that happens, our brain goes without sound. And when it goes without sound, our brain can forget how to hear sounds. So that once they're reintroduced, the brain says, sorry, I haven't heard you in so long, I don't know what to do with this information. So it's called use it or lose it. So when we talk about that to the patients, it really is more in terms of your abilities to understand those fine details in speech. So sometimes a patient can come to me and, on the graph, their hearing can be moderate, but they can come to me with 100% speech understanding. Well, if you've got 100% speech understanding and you have a moderate hearing loss, guess what? You're going to do great with hearing aids. All I need to give you is that volume, and now the brain is going to be able to understand it because that potential is there. Now, with some people, due to aging, genetic factors, and also length of hearing loss, their speech understanding abilities may be 52%. Well, if you have 52% speech understanding, guess what? I can give you volume with the hearing aid all day long, but I can't make your brain make more sense of it than it can today. And so what happens and what we see, and there's copious amounts of research about this idea of auditory deprivation, that use it or lose it concept. So there's a lot of information out there about it. And what that states is, if you go a long time with untreated hearing loss, it can impact that brain's ability to understand speech. And I've seen it time and time again. I've been an audiologist for over 10 years now, and I've seen it time and time again in my clinic where patients have just waited so long to do something about their hearing health care that it has impacted their potential hearing. And so when I talk to my patients about their hearing health care and how important it is for our brain, a lot of times that is my message. The ear is just that mechanism that gets the signal to the brain, but what the brain does with it is where all the magic is happening. And so when we discuss this with our patients, we just really want them to understand it's not our ears, but it's our brain where all of that information is being processed. And that's why it's super important to stimulate that part of the brain. So I hope that helps you better understand of why it's so important to do something about your hearing if you notice any difficulties hearing, and why, giving that brain consistent stimulus or consistent sound is so important to your long-term hearing as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you so much, and healthy hearing to all.